Well, joining me to discuss all of this is Professor Kapri Cafaro. Professor Cafaro is a former Democratic member of the Ohio Senate and is from the Politics and Public Affairs School at the American University in Washington. Thank you very much for being with us, Professor. So we've had to wait.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We've had to wait to hear from the President. Is it going to be worth waiting for?
Well, the State of the Union is always a big-ticket item, so to speak. Every year it gives the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, a national and international audience to lay out his priorities, his policy priorities, his vision for the future. And so it's always high stakes for no matter who is president. But I think this time in particular, because of the longest government shutdown in American history, 35 days, and a looming shutdown potentially coming in just about 10 or 12 days in the future here, I think that there is certainly a lot more at stake than maybe even previous State of the Unions.
Now, of course, that shut down in part very much due to his proposals for a wall along the Mexican border. We can expect to hear more about that?
I would certainly think so. I mean, he has taken to the airwaves a number of times, including doing one of his only, if not his only, Oval Office address to the national audience a few weeks back to talk about what he is now calling a border fence, border security. So I think we will hear President Trump talk about the wall, talk about the risks about not having a wall or a fortified fence at the southern border of the United States. But I think what we will see is him probably not call it a wall and probably call it something like a border fence or a barrier, because the issue of wall the wall word has become a matter of semantics and a sticking point politically between Democrats and Republicans.
We hear that he intends to strike a more bipartisan mood. We were told it's going to be about national unity. So do you expect the tone to be a little less of the normal Trump and a little more conciliatory?
Yes, I do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe conciliatory is a little bit too far, but I think that what he is trying to do is frame himself and brand himself in this State of the Union as someone who is willing to bargain, willing to come to the table and compromise with Democrats. I think that is a political calculus to basically put the ball back in the Democrats' court, saying, you know, basically presenting President Trump himself saying, I'm willing to come to the table, and if you're not, you're an obstructionist Democratic Party. So I think that there is a political calculus behind that setup, but obviously you have to look at future efforts, you know, whether it's tweets or actual negotiations, to see whether or not the bipartisan tenor and tone goes beyond the State of the Union and into actual practice.
And just a final quick thought on the choreography. The camera will be trained on the president, but of course he'll have an ally behind him in the form of the vice president, and possibly one might call a foe in the form of Nancy Pelosi, a very powerful woman in the House of Representatives. And all eyes will also be on them, I imagine, for reaction.
No question about it. That's always the case. I think a lot of people actually watch the vice president and the Speaker of the House closer than they do the President of the United States, even if it's just, you know, for fun. But I think that there's a lot to be said. Sometimes actions speak louder than words, and I'm sure that the American public will be looking particularly to Speaker Pelosi on how she presents herself and the kind of facial reactions and whether she stands, sits, claps, etc., as some kind of a sign, reading the tea leaves on where she stands on some of the policy issues that President Trump will bring up tonight.
I think it's going to be fascinating stuff. Professor Cafaro, thank you very much for making time to speak to us here on BBC News.
Thank you.